Montreal, the everyday and the extraordinary. The Elias Macco Show on CJAD 800.
Trudy Mason sitting in for Elias, taking a look at emergency room wait times. The Montreal Economic Institute, which is like an economic think tank, has taken a look at wait times in emergency rooms in Quebec since 2018 up until last year. What the MEI found is an increase in median waits of 41 minutes. Here to tell us more, Renaud Brossard, Vice President of Communications at the Montreal Economic Institute. Good morning, Renaud.
Good morning.
So why did you decide to take a look at emergency room wait times?
Well, this is something we do every year. We've been tracking how wait times in Quebec and increasingly throughout Canada have evolved in recent years. And unfortunately, what we're seeing is that it is not going in the right direction. As you mentioned, the median wait time, so that is the most typical experience that the patient is going to have when they show up at an ER in Quebec, has increased by 41 minutes since 2018 to what is now 5 hours and 12 minutes for the length of an ER stay. This is a relatively long amount of time, and unsurprisingly, it's having an effect where there's a lot of patients that when they do have an emergency, they always question, is it really an emergency? Do I really need to see a doctor for this? And this is one of the unfortunate consequences of these long wait times. Now, give us some definition. By wait time, you are describing from the moment a person walks into an ER to the moment when they are either moved to another ward or sent home. Is that correct? That's correct. And that's essentially the role of the ER is to essentially stabilize a patient, make sure that their emergency is dealt with, and then they can be moved on to another department if they need further care, or they can go back home if thankfully they are cured, or at least on the way to recovery. This is a measure we've been tracking for a number of years, and this amount of time, again, it's 5 hours and 12 minutes. This is much longer than what patients in other countries settle for. A couple of years ago, we were in France to do a documentary on the French healthcare system, and then I distinctly remember one of the doctors there saying that if a single patient, had to wait for more than 4 hours in an ER, the hospital would have to file a form to document the case to the local health authorities, because it was seen as a complete and utter failure of the health system. Unfortunately, what we see in Quebec is that the typical experience that the patient has at 5 hours, 12 minutes would be exactly what's considered as a complete and utter failure for the health system in France. So there are ways to do better. We don't really have to settle for these very long wait times. Well, I was going to say, maybe we're punch drunk, but I read that number 5 hours and 12 minutes from the moment you walk in to the moment you're either moved onto a ward or you go home after treatment or diagnosis. And I thought, 5 hours, not too bad. Honestly, because we hear so many horror stories of people on stretchers for, several days waiting for a bed in a ward or waiting on test results that never come. Have we lost sight of what it's supposed to be? I think part of it is, we've been so used to these long wait times that, you hear 5 hours, 12 minutes, it sounds great. But the other part of it is that when we talk about this 5 hours and 12 minutes, this is a province-wide median of all emergency rooms. Now, this doesn't mean that the experience is the same everywhere. So, for instance, if I go to the top center when it comes to wait times, or the shortest wait times, the CLSC, the Grande Valley, well, I can expect to wait 1 hour and 14 minutes and then be able to go home. But that's because it's a minor emergency room that treats smaller ailments or just stabilizes patients and send them to larger hospitals. But then when it comes to the worst performing hospitals, the top two are in Montreal. The worst performing is the Pavillon Albert Prévost of the Sacré-Cœur Hospital. That's 14 hours and 23 minutes. Now, this is a mental health hospital. It operates a bit differently, but even if you talk about more traditional ERs, the Royal Vic has the second worst wait time at 9 hours 45 minutes. So the experience between a patient that goes to the CLSC Grande Ville and waits 1 hour 14 and then goes back home versus somebody that goes to Royal Vic and waits 9 hours 45 before either going back home or be sent to another ward is drastically different. And that's part of why, this 5 or 12 almost seems good, because we are used to these Montreal health centers with very, very, very long wait times.
I like this idea that you're pitching as a solution, an intermediate medical care center. And from my observation, from my own health, quote unquote, emergencies and those of my kids, if I could go to an intermediate resource that isn't the ER for serious cases, but is a place that could do two things, I think it would drain a lot of patients away from regular ERs. The two things are X-rays on the spot and stitches, because often it's this minor stuff that that you end up sitting in the waiting room for 10 hours for.
And you're absolutely right. And part of the problem, part of the reason why we don't see these sort of initiatives is just how top down the system is in Quebec. You've got emergency room doctors that see issues with our health system every single day. But when they see an issue and they suggest a solution, that solution has to go all the way up to the top for the minister to read about the situation, see what's happening, and then it has to go all the way down to be applied on the ground. That means there's not a lot of flexibility. In systems where there's a little bit more openness to having some private healthcare, but reimbursed by the public, where the public acts more like an insurer than a provider, well, you do have more flexibility. So these intermediate care centers, they're actually quite common in France. And the idea behind those systems is what's actually came from ER doctors that noticed that a lot of the patients that were waiting really, really long, that were taking a lot of resources from public hospitals, were patients with lower priority cases, so P3, P4s, and P5s. People with a broken arm, people needing stitches, so not a life or death situation, but still a minor emergency. And essentially, they didn't have to wait until the minister gave them a go-ahead. They just noticed a problem. They opened up a small intermediate care center, and they've been able to help lower the load on the local hospital, which has benefited patients in the local hospital because they can get the treatment they need faster, but it's also benefited everybody that gets to go to these smaller ERs, to these minor ERs, because they also get seen faster.
I have a question, though, about staffing, because adding that layer of the intermediate medical care center or opening up so doctors can practice both public and private, which means they would have to maintain a private office in addition to whatever they're doing in hospitals. It means we need more nurses, more orderlies, more X-ray technicians, more of everything that we seem to be in short supply of.
Well, partly, yes, we would need more staff. I think that's very, very clear that we don't have enough nurses, we don't have enough doctors. But the other part is, well, training a new nurse, training a new doctor, it takes years. So the other question then becomes, what can we do to better utilize the limited resources we have? Because a doctor that spends time in a public hospital might not have the same amount, might not be able to treat the same amount of patients than they do in the private settings. I know that there was a study done a couple of years ago in Quebec that as doctors that were treating patients so for the public system, but in private medical clinics, if they saw that they were more productive in the private medical setting. And they said yes. The answer was yes, because in those private medical clinics, well, the nurses would start 30 minutes before they would, so the patient would be prepped, so that the moment the surgeon clocks in, he can start the first surgery. There would be some cleaning staff that would be on standby, so that the moment the surgery is done, they can clean the room and essentially get another patient in as fast as possible. There's all of these small things that essentially adding more flexibility, giving a little bit more initiative to doctors through private means can help and essentially make it so that we can treat more patients, but with the same limited resources.
Thanks very much for your time, but I know appreciate it.
It's always a pleasure.
Renaud Brossard, Vice President of Communications with the Montreal Economic Institute.
Unmistakably Canadian.
It's the music that raised you.
The artists raising the bar.
Hi, this is Brian Adams.
Hey, my name's Brett Emmons. I'm from the Glorious Sons.
Hi, I'm Nelly Furtado.
Made in Canada. The station that champions Canadian music.
Loud, proud, and all yours.
No passports required. Just press play.
Tap into Made in Canada now on iHeartRadio.ca
Or the free iHeartRadio app.
Trudy Mason sitting in for Elias, and we are right in the midst of the Caring for Kids Radiothon for the Montreal Children's Hospital. Every year, hundreds of babies are diagnosed before birth with conditions that require specialized care as soon as they enter the world. Joining me now for the Senville Miracle Break is Dr. Wadi Mawad. Dr. Mawad is a pediatric cardiologist at the Children's. Dr. Mawad, I can only imagine it must be overwhelming for parents to learn that their unborn baby has a heart defect. How do you prepare these families for what's ahead?
Absolutely. It is one of the most difficult moments a family can face when they're expecting to start their journey of starting a family. And learning that there's a heart problem with the baby is a very frightening moment. And that's, I guess, where the journey starts is acknowledging that and making sure that they don't feel alone facing those uncertainties. And of course, beyond the medical expertise part of things, where we provide a diagnosis, explain clearly what the issues might be. We care for these families in a multidisciplinary way, providing them with time and information and support throughout this difficult period.
As a cardiologist, what is it like when years later you see a tiny baby that you had operated on coming to you all grown up and doing well? That must be tremendously rewarding.
Oh my God, yes! It's one of the job's biggest payouts. I would say is really the greatest motivator is seeing these patients and their families thriving down the line, and it reminds us that all of the efforts that were put in by our team, but also by the patient's family, etc., are all for this moment. Really, the goal of what we do is to give these children a normal childhood where they don't think about their heart every day necessarily, and it's a tremendously rewarding thing to see that. Because often, as you said, these patients we've known before birth, at their birth, during the most difficult time periods, at the time of diagnosis, surgery, all of the care and the more intensive side of things, and then when things go well and they do well, it's an absolutely incredibly gratifying thing to experience.
We're speaking with Dr. Wadi Mawad, pediatric cardiologist at the Children's, brought to you by Senville. Doctor, can you tell us from your point of view why you feel it's important for our listeners to support the Montreal Children's Hospital Foundation? What kind of a difference can it make for these tiny patients and their parents?
It makes a world of difference, and any level of support, whether it be in terms of donation, time, effort in creating materials for further future families, everything goes a very long way in addressing the on-the-ground needs of our families. So these donations and these efforts go a very long way for us to be able to deploy resources, programs, acquire new equipment, that all makes a very immediate difference in the care we're able to provide for our patients and their families. So it's a very impactful way of partnering with us and the families that are experiencing a journey through congenital heart disease at the Montreal Children's.
Thanks for speaking with us, Doctor.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Dr. Wadi Mawad, pediatric cardiologist at the Children's. This Miracle Break has been brought to you by Senville. You can join the Circle of Hugs by calling the Dormez-vous phone bank at 514-939-KIDS. That's 514-939-5437.
You're listening to the Caring for Kids Radiothon. The Brown's Shoes Foundation encourages you to make a donation and join the circle of hugs now. Call the Dormez-vous phone bank at 514-939-KIDS.
Unmistakably Canadian.
It's the music that raised you.
The artists raising the bar.
Hi, this is Brian Adams.
Hey, my name's Brett Emmons. I'm from the Glorious Sons.
Hi, I'm Nelly Furtado.
Made in Canada. The station that champions Canadian music.
Loud, proud, and all yours.
No passports required. Just press play.
Tap into Made in Canada now on iHeartRadio.ca
or the free iHeartRadio app.
Debate, interviews, and breaking news. The Elias Macco Show. News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
Yesterday on the show, we spoke with our tech expert, Carmi Levy, about online fraud. And that's because a CJAD 800 listener had called to explain how she had been defrauded, a very deep fraud where they got into everything, including reassigning her telephone information and going into bank accounts. And it was a real mess. And then we read a piece in the Globe and Mail from a very tech-savvy, very intelligent guy who is being targeted by fraudsters and who thinks that, you know, it shouldn't just be up to consumers, ordinary people like us, to deal with this. Our government and business should be doing more. We welcome him to CJAD now. Michael Geist is Canada Research Chair in Internet and E-commerce Law at the University of Ottawa. Good morning, Michael.
Well, good morning.
In your case, where was the fraud originating from, do you think?
Yeah, I believe it comes out of Russia. And my sense that that's the case is because, as I note in the piece, for the last month or so, I've been getting these attempts to try to hack into my Apple account. And it starts with a legitimate email from Apple, basically saying to confirm that I'm changing certain settings in my account. And I haven't asked to do that, so someone is triggering that. And then it often follows with a phone call purporting to seek to confirm. It's not actually Apple that's calling. And usually it looks like a local number, the spoofing Canadian number. But in one instance, they made a mistake, and it indicated it was likely coming from Russia, which is why I believe that that's actually who's behind this.
In your piece in the Globe, you're laying out the argument that there is too much responsibility falling to consumers, and in particular to seniors who can be quite vulnerable to this because they may be less tech savvy than younger internet and tech users. Where do you think we are falling down in Canada in protecting consumers?
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think I try to highlight this really in a couple of ways. I think broadly speaking, the situation in Canada is that much of the responsibility lies on the individual. And we talk about the need for providing digital skills and technical literacy to ensure that people can identify the potential fraud risks and, know enough not to respond to some of the kinds of things that, I've experienced over the last little bit. But the truth of the matter is that increasingly, fraudsters are getting more and more sophisticated. They're using technology in ways that make it more and more difficult to identify what's taking place. And in fact, the very things that we often highlight that people should be doing are the things that can be used against them. And as I note in the piece, seniors are particularly vulnerable here. They're often a bit more isolated. They can be scared, using different kinds of tactics to create a bit of sense of an urgency, and so then respond in a way that really runs counter to their best interests. And so we can't simply say, you know what, you got to be smarter when it comes to this. We certainly can't take a position that say, well, seniors or others can't be on the internet in the way that, the government is thinking about in Bill C-34 with the social media ban, saying they're just going to remove a segment of society from certain services. I think that, this highlights how that kind of approach just doesn't work. And so I think that we need to load more of the responsibility on ultimately to the companies and others that are better positioned to identify and take action proactively against some of this fraud, and they're unlikely to do it on their own. And so that's where government comes into play to take positions that basically force them to do it.
What are some other jurisdictions doing in along those lines in holding companies accountable?
Yeah, so there's a number of examples that I cite in that piece. The UK is a good example. So, for example, British banks are now required in certain circumstances to reimburse victims of authorized push payment fraud. So that's instances when a fraudster tricks a victim into sending money from their own bank account into a fraudulent account. And of course, as soon as that happens, everything disappears and the money's gone. And so, the belief is that the banks are better positioned to identify when something like that happens, and so they ought to bear the brunt of what takes place. We've seen Australia introduce plans for network-level blocking of the spoofed calls and texts that I just mentioned in the context of the attempts to get into my account, more verification requirements for platform advertisers with some real penalties that are included in all of this. So we have seen some countries say, listen, this is a real problem. We're not going to educate our way out of it. We're not going to simply say you need to do a better job of understanding what might be risky or fraudulent. We're going to actually put some of the responsibility, at least for the losses, on the companies themselves, because they're simply better positioned to try to deal with it.
Well, from your lips to the Carney government's ears, Michael, that's all I can say, because there's so much shame associated with falling prey to fraudsters, because you feel so stupid. If you've been suckered, you feel that it's your own fault, that you weren't savvy enough, you weren't tech able enough. So to hear someone say, no, the system isn't working for you, I think is very refreshing. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Michael Geist, Canada Research Chair in Internet and E-commerce Law at the University of Ottawa. After the 10:30 update, as reported by James Foster, we will take a look at parking regulation on private property, including handicap spots. Who is allowed to ticket you? Do you have to pay those tickets if it's private? Well, we'll get into it. That's coming up.
iHeartRadio is throwing it back.
2010s, the decade.
To the days of huge hits and unforgettable anthems. A non-stop stream of the biggest and best.
Drake, Rihanna, Beyonce, Katy, Gaga, The Weeknd,
and more. All your decade-defining favorites, all in one place.
Hi, it's Katy Perry.
Hey, it's Bruno Mars.
This is Kesha.
Find 2010's The Decade on the free iHeartRadio app. Preset the station so it's always one tap away. The Elias Macco Show. On demand.
On demand. Don't miss a thing.
Find your favorite clips at CJAD800.com and on the free iHeartRadio app.
You pull into a shopping center parking lot. You end up with a ticket on your windshield. Is it really a ticket? Is it a fine? It may look like a ticket, but do you have to pay it? Well, we'll ask Avi Levy from Ticket 911 in a moment.
Hello, Canada.
This is Bryan Adams Radio. Hosted by Bryan Adams himself.
We'll play a few of mine, a ton of my favorites, and some must-hear behind-the-scenes stories from the world of rock and roll.
I'm coming to get you!
One thing about doing rock and roll so long is you end up meeting a lot of the people that you admire. Sometimes you even get to work with them.
It's only love, and that's all.
Bryan Adams Radio.
I'm coming back to you.
Now available on the free iHeartRadio app.
Hey everybody, how are you tonight? Sounds great.
La STN vous souhaite la bienvenue à bord.
This is your stop. In Transit with Elias Mackos, CJAD 800.
And we are talking parking, specifically parking on private property for two reasons. One, we've been hearing about people parking at the REM station in Kirkland outside of the designated area just for Kirkland residents and ending up, if they're commuters and are taking off on the REM, coming back to their car and finding a ticket issued. And we're also talking about it because of a story that my friends told me about, going into the parking lot of a Tim Hortons on the West Island. 2 handicap spaces outside the Tim Hortons, separated by an area hash marks on the ground, crosshatch on the ground, indicating that area is to be left vacant so that the people in the handicap spots can get in and out of those vehicles easily. And the morning that they pulled in, lo and behold, someone had parked right on the hash marked spot, impeding the two handicap parking spots on either side. So, shoot the evil eye at the person getting into that car who said, "I'm a boss, I make my own rules." Now that's the kind of guy you want to get a ticket, right? That type of entitlement, that's who you want to get a ticket. But the question is, who enforces parking rules when it's private property? Handicap spots, reserve spots, whose responsibility is that? Do police come onto private property and ticket? It is the property owner? Is it the business owner, the tenant of the land? Here to help us understand what's going on, Avi Levy, founder of Ticket 911. Avi, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So what about this question of parking on private property, shopping centers and business parking lots and so on? Whose authority is it to set up the spaces and police the spaces in some cases?
So if an individual parks on private property, such as a shopping center, the police do have the right to issue tickets under the Highway Safety Code.
So they can come onto the private property. And for example, that boss who parked in the hashtag area between the two handicap spots, that person could have been ticketed by police.
That person could have definitely been ticketed by police, correct.
And if a passerby, is outraged by someone doing that, can they call 911 and request a patrol car to come?
Yes, absolutely.
So you don't have to be the property owner to report that type of thing via 911?
No, if you call 911 and tell them that someone's illegally parked, the police will come, will look, and then if he is illegally parked, they can rightfully issue a ticket.
And do the police have the right to tow it? If a car, for example, is badly parked and is blocking access or something like that, do the police have the right to have the vehicle towed, or does the property owner have the right to have the vehicle towed?
The property owner definitely has the right to have the vehicle towed. The police can, under certain scenarios, have the vehicle towed as well.
Well, here's a question for you. In the case of the boss on the crosshatched area, could the property owner have called a tow truck and had that vehicle taken out?
He could have, yeah, sure. If he's got proper signage in his parking lot advising people that if you park illegally, you'll either get ticketed or towed, then yes, he could have had the individual towed or ticketed.
Now, that raises the question about whether these tickets issued by property owners on privately owned land, whether they are binding on the person who receives them. We had the same question come up in the parking area outside the designated Kirkland residence parking area at the REM station in Kirkland, with people getting tickets on their windshields there. Do you have to pay?
So the issue really depends on who gives you the ticket. If it is the police or the parking enforcement authority and it's a City of Montreal ticket, then if you don't pay it, there will be consequences on your driver's license potentially. If the ticket is issued by a private ticketing company or towing company, then it does not go against your driver's license, and it's basically a civil consequence. So if you don't pay, they can come after you civilly, like in small claims court, to collect the funds. But it's not as, serious, if I can use that word, as having your license potentially suspended for non-payment of the fine.
Would you recommend someone just ignoring a ticket like that that's issued by the property owner or the parking monitoring company that they've hired?
I don't know that I would tell them to ignore it. I would let them know that the consequences are not the same as a ticket issued by the SPVM, for example, and then they would decide what they want to do. I mean, would somebody sue for one ticket? Probably not. The cost will probably be higher than collecting the ticket itself. But if you're, a repeat offender and you end up with 5 or 10 tickets, well, at one point it'll probably be worth it for the property owner or ticketing company to come after you.
And if they proceed via small claims court, I think you mentioned, to try and get that money out of you, not a good idea to ignore a summons through small claims court?
No, because if you ignore it and they go to court and make proof and you're not there, you'll very likely end up with a judgment by default, which will then be enforceable. And so, yeah, ignoring it is rarely a good solution.
In your experience, can these companies that are hired by property owners be negotiated with? For example, we have a text in from a texter who says, about 2 months ago, I got a ticket issued by Max Park. They say it's not a ticket, it's a parking fee. I told them I have a right to park there as I am an employee of the business, and I had the proper sticker in my window, which they did not see. Is this parking fee enforceable, or can I just throw it in the garbage? Or maybe the better idea would be to call the company?
Yeah, the better idea would be to speak to them and try to resolve it rather than ignore it, because they may not have seen the sticker and they may not know that you're an employee of the company and allowed to work there. And I think if you communicate with them and let them know that, you'll probably end up having the ticket withdrawn. We have
a text in about another problem that has been in the news in the past couple of years, and that is these privately issued parking, I'm going to put tickets in quotation mark there, like the fines, on windshields that are designed to resemble very closely legitimate police-issued or city-issued parking tickets. Has that not been resolved? Have those companies been told or been reprimanded for using that design that makes it look like a real ticket?
Yes, absolutely. They're not allowed to use that design and to make the ticket misleading or appear as though it is a real ticket. That's one thing that they're not allowed to do. So you may have some recourses over there.
And how would you proceed on that one?
Well, depending on what the issue is, you would contact them, or you can file a complaint. The Consumer Protection Act can protect you. I mean, it depends on what the issue is and where you would need to file your complaint, but there are various remedies available. Now, the fact that they're not allowed to design it doesn't automatically mean that the ticket will be void, but again, if you communicate with them, you can probably come to a settlement or have them withdraw it.
And at any point, even if you've racked up a lot of these privately issued tickets, is the company, the parking enforcement company, able to boot your car or tow your car? Do they have the legal right to do that if they find it on the property yet again?
They have the right to tow it. They don't have the right to necessarily boot it.
And they tow it where? Elsewhere in the lot, or they tow it to their impound?
Depends on the company. Some companies will tow it to the impound. Some companies will tow it a few streets down where you have legal parking. And then when you pay them, they sort of tell you where your car is and off you go.
That sounds like extortion, or it's abduction for ransom is what it is. Do you have to pay the impound fee to get your vehicle back when it's one of these cases of a private company?
That's a good question. So you don't have to pay the impound fee to get it back, but if you don't, you usually have a hard time getting it back or finding out where it is. Unless you have a modern car and you can just locate it, in which case they're out of luck.
How do these private companies, this is from a texter, how do they get your personal information to take you to small claims court? Because they've got your plate, they've got the make and model of the car. Are they able to access the SAAQ files?
That's a great question. Technically, they're not allowed, and that would definitely be a challenge that they or their lawyers would have to figure out. But yeah, that's an issue. That's a good point.
Ooh, all right. That might be a call to Ticket 911, Avi?
There you go.
All right. Avi Levy, I really appreciate you spending some time with us answering the questions this morning.
Thank you so much.
Avi Levy, founder of Ticket 911.
Unmistakably Canadian.
It's the music that raised you.
The artists raising the bar.
Hi, this is Brian Adams.
Hey, my name's Brett Emmons. I'm from the Glorious Sons.
Hi, I'm Nelly Furtado.
Made in Canada. The station that champions Canadian music.
Loud, proud, and all yours.
No passports required. Just press play.
Tap into Made in Canada now on iHeartRadio.ca
or the free iHeartRadio app.
Stories impacting Montrealers. News impacting Montreal. The Elias Macco Show. News Talk Radio. CJAD 800.
This is primo berry season here in Quebec, and there is a concern being expressed by an association representing some Quebec farmers. They say that cheap surplus products out of the U.S. are being dumped onto the Canadian market. And that means here in Quebec, instead of finding our locally grown berries in supermarkets, you will find very well priced foreign grown products, which they worry about in terms of support for Quebec farmers. To tell us more, Pier-Luc Deschamps joins us. He's with the Quebec Strawberry and Raspberry Producers Association. Pier-Luc, welcome to CJAD.
Hey, thank you, Trudy. Thank you for having me.
What indications do you have that dumping is going on?
Because we can see, we have some... we are in the market in Montreal or Toronto, and we can see all the costing price that's going down there. And when the demand is very lower, normally August is our big month for a raspberry producer. We are producing only 3 months here. It's from July to October, 3 months and a half. And normally we have a space, we have a shelf full of raspberries in grocery stores and markets in Montreal. And when we see the prices is going down, it's been like 2 weeks and a half, 3 weeks now that we see that's not the normal price we have. That's way lower. The demand is way low. Why? Why is the reason? And this is because of the dumping right now that we have. A dumping that's majority comes from Mexico and U.S. in Montreal.
I noticed that one of the big grocery chains had a container of raspberries at $1.44 this past week, when I was there, they were flying off the display shelf. I have to admit. You suspect those are dumped at $1.44 for that size of container, the small container?
Yes. This is way below our production cost here. And normally we can see, you can see raspberries from Quebec and for other producers because we are growing more raspberries. It's been like 10 years that we are investing to have more raspberries to make our place on the shelf. You can see raspberries from U.S. and Mexico all year long with some prices, some special during the winter and spring. But normally the grocery stores are making us spaces to our production because we have more and more raspberries here. And you can find special. Right now, this week it's better. We have a special in some banners. But the thing is, when you see raspberries from Quebec or Mexico or U.S., you are expecting to see at least some of Quebec, but you don't see that. So the customer will think, oh, maybe there's not enough in Quebec, so that's why we have U.S. In the shelves. But that's not the truth. That's why we talked about this morning.
What is the fair price, the production price for Quebec raspberries?
Normally, we are expecting at least 32, 34 for a box of 12 clamshell of 170 grams. But with the dumping, you can see, you need to understand that dumping is we have truckloads, full loads of raspberries coming in that cross the border with no price at all. So you can see $6-7 for a box, $7 for a box, comparatively to 32 that we will ask because that's our production cost here in Quebec, because we have way higher norms, social norms, and way higher. We have the salary it's more, and we invest a lot to produce under tunnels, to have better quality fruits, and because you know the quality is the thing. If it's nice, you're gonna buy it and come back to buy. So we invested a lot. So when you see prices like that, sometimes it's because the banner want to invite you in the stores and to buy more stuff. So it's okay when they lost money, but when we have 3 weeks, 4 weeks at our peak season, right now it's our peak season, that is sad for all the producers in Quebec right now.
Concerning the investment and in providing more raspberries, in other words, increasing the supply going into the market, tell me about these late fruiting varieties that are going to extend the season, because that should give farmers a boost too if we have Quebec berries extending right into September. Yes, and even October. It's like the strawberries. Back in the days, strawberries was only 1 month. It's like June for strawberries, July for raspberries, and then after it was over. But now we are investing with tunnels above ground varieties. So we are not underground. We have on pods there, and we have improving system. So we can do other varieties more that are not, because it's really cold here during the winter. So we have variety that we can put in fridge and make sure we control the temperature, so they are not affected if we have a no snow winter or very cold winter. So we are truly investing more and more, and a lot more of producers are looking to do the same. So because it was a demand of the banners to have more fruits to make place for us on the shelves, to stop a bit the U.S. demand, the U.S. importation. Sorry. Yeah, well, I think you're pointing out something that's logical. If Quebecers want to buy, they have to have the ability to buy. Exactly. And that means that our supermarkets have to, recognize that there's a local demand that may not be keyed to price. This texter to the show says, I'm standing by Canadian products and will happily pay more for them if necessary. Yes. But you can't even pay more if there's no Quebec berries available on the shelves, because the supermarkets have opted for the cheaper imports. Yes, exactly. That's why it's important for the customer to know, because dumping is the market. The U.S. market wants to protect its market in the United States. So if to have a better price, they need to let some volumes go, and we are the closest friends here up north, so it's really easy for them to just push truckloads and keep their market strong, and that's why we call it dumping, because here the markets normally you can see for us at $3.99 or $2.99. That's normal August prices for the raspberries, but at $1.44 with no at all Quebec produce in some shelves, that's really impacting our producers, because raspberries, it's for 5 to 6 days. If you want to go after raspberries in 1 month in the field, you will see the raspberries, the quality is not there. You need to harvest them every 2 days. So it's really a short-lived fruit. It's not like bananas or potatoes. Pier-Luc, thank you very much for coming on the air to explain this to us. Thank you very much for having me. Pier-Luc Deschamps is with the Quebec Strawberry and Raspberries Producers Association. When we return after the 11 o'clock news, we'll talk about that case of a Quebec man who ended up being fined because he used AI to compile some court documents that were basically hallucinations. More on that coming up.
You've heard the chaos. Now you can see it. Oh my God. Watch all your favorite podcasts from start to finish right inside the free iHeartRadio app. Gets the blood going, huh? Catch every laugh and eye roll on shows like the Tom Green Farmcast and Park the Bus. Now with full video. We're building a ramp for Tony Hawk. It's the same hosts and the same chemistry with all the hilarious moments you've been missing right on your screen. Cheers. Open the free iHeartRadio app, search video podcasts, and tap watch.